Hey everyone, welcome back to the Linux Tube. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that thumbs up button, and also click that bell icon so that you never miss any updates or any new videos that we put out. Today we're going to break down what makes up a Linux distribution. By the end of this video, you'll understand a little bit more what the key components are of a Linux distribution and what makes the Linux OS function. So let's go ahead and dive into it. One of the things that I first want to tell you is that this is going to be a bit of a talking head video. Sorry, it's one that, I feel that I need to make, and there's not a lot to really show in it because I'm explaining what makes up the actual Linux distribution, the core component parts. So you'll see some screen flashes here and there, but not very many. So just a warning to you guys. This is more of an educational video, so I hope you stick around, watch to the end, all right? So the first thing we got to talk about really is the heart of the Linux distribution, and that is the actual Linux kernel. And the kernel is the core component of the operating system that makes everything function. It allows software to communicate with hardware. It's basically the actual building block of the operating system. It's called the Linux kernel because it was created by a man by the name of Linus Torvalds. He is the father of Linux, and somebody, I don't know who, but somebody gave this kernel the nickname Linux when he first developed it, and it just kind of stuck. And now everybody just kind of uses the name Linux to refer to the actual whole of the operating system, when in reality it's really only meant to be termed for the kernel. Otherwise, technically, Linux really doesn't have an operating system doesn't really have a name. A lot of people you'll hear refer to it as GNU/Linux because some of the GNU tools that it uses in its core, like Bash and those kind of things. But as a whole, really, Linux is referring to the kernel. So that's an interesting thing that you may not have known in Linux at all. So the kernel really does a few things. Like I said, the most important part is the resource management, which allocates the CPU and RAM to resources for various different programs. Also, hardware abstraction. Now, hardware abstraction is where it details and provides a constant interface for applications to interact with certain types of hardware. Now, an example of this is when you download or you use a piece of software to create an actual audio file, and you want to play it back, whether it's a video or just basically a music file that you're using. Either way, when you want to try to play it back, your operating system software, whether it's VLC or AMROC or whatever, doesn't really know what hardware to use. It's dependent on the kernel to tell it that this is the hardware that you use and identifying that piece of hardware for it. So that is basically what hardware abstraction is. Also, security and stability is something that the kernel handles at its level, which is something that is very important, and kind of one of the things that Linux stands proud on is its lack of frequent and multitude security vulnerabilities that other operating systems out there fall prey to all the time. So that is something that it does. Without the kernel, your computer just wouldn't function, to be honest with you. It'd just be a smattering of programs trying to figure out what to do and where to go. So the second part that we're going to want to talk about is the very first thing that is run when you start up your Linux operating system, and that's the bootloader. As I said, it's the first piece of software that runs. Its job is to load the kernel into memory and start the operating system and allow the hardware and everything, the resource management and allocation and all that good stuff to happen. Popular bootloaders that you might find out there are Grub. There's 1 and 2. Then there's also, which stands for GNU, another GNU tool, GNU Grand Unified Bootloader. And then you've also got another one out there that's called Lilo, which is Linux loader. And then there's also Systemd, which is another bootloader out there that's available that a lot of people, some people use, some people don't use them for different reasons that you'll hear throughout the community, but nonetheless, it's there. The bootloader allows you to choose between different systems that you may have installed on your system. Now, the third part that we're going to talk about is the init system. Now, what exactly is the init system? Once the kernel is loaded, the init system has to take over, and that system is responsible for starting and managing system services and daemons. Now, think of it kind of like an orchestra conductor for your system and it's all of its processes that are having to run. The most common init system in the modern day distro today is systemd. It is one that is arguably the most controversial one because systemd does more than just the init system. As I referred to earlier, it also has a bootloader side and many other components that are created into systemd, kind of almost like an operating system of its own. And so that tends to create a little friction with some people in the community. So you're going to find some systemd lovers and you're going to find some systemd haters. But there are other systemds out there, like you've got sysvinit, you've got OpenRC, you've tons of them out there that you could choose from. So if you don't like systemd for whatever reason, then well, by all means, you could switch out your init system. And that's the glorious thing about Linux is you can do these kind of things. You can switch out your init system for something else. It ensures that everything starts and runs correctly in the order that it needs to and runs smoothly. The fourth part that we're going to talk about is the shell. So what exactly is the shell? The shell is a command line interface that actually allows you to pass commands and interact with the operating system by typing said commands, like ls command, restart, start your display server, all these things. You can do that through your terminal emulator, or you can do it through your actual shell. Like the ones that are popular out there are bash, ZS, H, and fish. The shell is incredibly powerful because once again, it allows you at a command line level to have fine-grained control over your system. It's where you can execute commands, you can even run scripts, and you can do all your file management through there. In fact, there are in your terminal, which is a terminal emulator for your command, like your bash, your actual shell, your shell, you can run different TUIs in your terminal user interfaces that are like Ranger for for your file managers, Commander, those kind of things. The other part that we're going to talk about, the fifth part, is going to be your graphical server. Now, the graphical server, this is the most important part of Linux because if you don't have one, then it can be a little bit difficult for new to Linux users, but really it's not a deal breaker. And a lot of people actually run it without it. Servers don't have a graphical user interface in there. No, they don't have a display server in there at all. They just have everything done by command line. Most of us prefer graphical interface though, because it makes it so much easier. And we have two that are commonly used in Linux. The first one is Xserver or Xorg, where you can go and find it at, and it's like X11 is what it's referred to. It's the old one. It's the granddaddy of them all. It is pretty much so feature complete as much as it's going to be. It's not even under development. It's just kind of sort of maintained. There's not a lot you can do with it. It's kind of reached its potential. And so that's what a lot of your older distributions are, and a lot of people still like. And then you have the new kid on the block that came along known as Wayland. It's a much different protocol. It's a compositor, which you do have a compositor in Xorg known as PyCom that's kind of sort of the cutting edge of what Wayland is like in X11, but it's not as fully functional as Wayland or as grand and beautiful as Wayland. The graphical server is really responsible for displaying all the graphics that you see on your screen. It manages how windows, icons, and other graphical elements are rendered and interacted with. Like your scaling, all that good stuff, your monitor, your window placement on your monitors, you can do all this kind of stuff. This is what makes it possible for a lot of people to use Linux. The desktop environment. Most people that are coming over to Linux are completely lost, especially if they like download a server ISO, not really realizing that they've downloaded a server ISO, and that when they boot into it, it's like you're greeted with the TTY, and you have to log into your server, and then it'll open up a terminal, and then you're actually have to do everything from command line, from opening applications to navigating into folders and stuff like that. checking out files, editing files, creating files, whatever. So there are desktop environments to Linux that a lot of people don't realize. Desktop environments are what gives you all the bells and whistles to interact in a graphical user environment, or GUI, like the windows, the icons, the menus, the toolbars. There are some that actually try to emulate Windows to a T or Mac to a T. But then again, if you're coming over to Linux, then wouldn't you just be better off not to try to emulate Windows 100% and maybe kind of get something that's kind of close to it, so you have some familiarity to navigate around and use it, instead of trying to fool yourself into thinking that you're using Windows? Because after all, Linux is not Windows and it's not Mac. And therefore, I wouldn't set yourself up for expectations and failure of emulating Windows and then being let down when it's not, because after all, you chose to come here to a distribution that is not Windows. So don't do that to yourself. Now, some of the popular desktop environments that you'll find out there are GNOME, KDE, and also XFCE and Cinnamon. Now let's go ahead and jump into the actual seventh part, which is known as the package manager. This is where things differ from Windows and Mac. The package manager's role is to install the packages from those different locations, and it handles the dependencies that are required to make them run. And it ensures that you have the necessary libraries and files for the applications to run. Examples of package managers that are available in Linux are the apt package manager, which is for your Debian-based distributions such as like Ubuntu, Debian itself, and any of the multitudes of forks out there that come off it. Then you have yum/dnf package manager for Red Hat based distros. Then you have also Pacman for Arch Linux, like OpenSUSE has Zypper. It's a crucial tool for maintaining your system too, because a lot of them will maintain and complete your updates for you. So now the eighth part has to kind of go hand in hand with the package management, and that's the actual software applications. A lot of the people that come over to Linux have a hard time with the software applications because these programs are the ones that you use on a daily basis, like your web browser, Office Suite, media players, and so much more. So like Linux distros come with a variety of them already pre-installed, and most of them, if you're really new to Linux and coming over, you don't even know what they are. You kind of got to sort of figure out what they are. Once you open them, you'll see some familiarity. There is a bit of a learning curve for some of these software because not all the toggles and buttons and different things are where you're at. That's what I want to talk about on the applications, for Linux, and that they're only installed via your package management system. So there are different also containerized packages out there that make software available too, like snaps for Ubuntu, Flatpaks, which are agnostic to distribution, as well as app images. These applications that you'll find on Linux system are very useful and productive once you've struggled through that initial learning curve. That's it. That's all we need to talk about in this. I mean, it was a talking head video. I'm kind of sorry. I tried to go through it as fast as possible. And so there you guys have it. The main parts that make up a Linux distribution, which are the kernel, the bootloader, the init system, the shell, the actual display or graphical server, and then your package manager along coupled with the software applications. Each component plays a very important role in creating a seamless and powerful operating system that's based on the Linux kernel. If you found this video to be very helpful, dude, give it a thumbs up. Share it with anybody that you know that might actually think about coming to Linux or actually want to know more about Linux. Don't forget to subscribe, please. And also stick around for some more tech tips and tutorials. Thanks for watching, and you guys keep doing what you do. Keep on Linuxing, stay blessed, stay safe, and above all, I will see you in the very next one.